Today, we are happy to welcome a panel of experts in the restaurant industry and to talk about how our restaurants can continue to rebound from COVID-19. We'll also outline some legislation happening in Iowa and Illinois aimed at benefiting the industry. My name is Jake Ford. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Quad Cities Chamber. Thank you again for joining us this morning. This program will be recorded and available on the Chamber's website after the event, so please stay tuned for that link. A special thanks, as always, to our Legislative Series annual sponsors, AM General LLC, Arconic, Excellent Generation, and Stanley Consultants. A full list of the Chamber's 2021 advocacy priorities can be found on the website as well. You'll also see there our Advocacy Action Center, which we hope you'll utilize to provide feedback on legislative issues that are important to you. Please also keep an eye out for our e-news updates that will be hitting your inbox. Each week, our government affairs team will keep you updated on what's happening in DC, Springfield, and Des Moines. As we're getting started here, please enter your questions for our panelists into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We will address as many questions as possible during the program. Now, I'd like to start today's program by introducing our panelists and letting them tell you a little bit more about what they do and who they are. And to start us off, I will introduce Jessica Dunker. She is the President and CEO of the Iowa Restaurant Association. Jessica?
Thank you. Good morning. The Iowa Restaurant Association is the state affiliate of the National Restaurant Association. We, like the Illinois Restaurant Association, are accountable to the restaurants and bars in our own state, so in the state of Iowa. We are in the midst of our legislative session where we are working on both immediate and long-term recovery issues, as well as providing serve-safe education around the state as best we can. So we're excited to share a little bit about what's happening today and looking forward to great conversation.
Great, thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce our second panelist, Matt Quinn, who is the Assistant Director of Government Relations and Communications for the Illinois Restaurant Association. Matt?
Thanks, Jake. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Thank you. Thanks, Jake. Thanks for having me today. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone. I'll just touch on a few things briefly. As Jessica stated, we represent all aspects of the Illinois side of the restaurant and hospitality industry. So restaurants, bars, caterers, event venues, breweries, our allied vendors, really everyone in between. Before COVID, we were the largest private sector industry in the state. As we all know, it's going to be a very long road to recovery, and there were 124,000 restaurant and hospitality jobs that were lost from March to December 2020. And sadly, we estimate that 20% of restaurants may not reopen if business conditions continue. So we're really working on all fronts to provide support, relief, and advocacy for the restaurant and hospitality industry. And glad to talk a little bit more about that. I don't know if we wanted to dive into it now, Jake, or we'll talk about it more during our Q&A.
Sounds good. Thanks, Matt. And finally, our third panelist representing the Quad Cities community here is LaTisha Howlett. She is the owner of Bayside Bistro in Davenport. So I will turn it over to her to introduce herself now.
Good morning, everybody. My name is LaTisha Howlett, and I am from Bayside Bistro in the village of East Davenport. We're a family-owned business here in the Quad Cities, and also the owners of Bayside Smoothies and more. And so we've been around for 12 years here in the Quad Cities and are excited and honored to be a part of the panel. And so looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say and those questions and how we can move forward. So thank you for having us.
Great, thanks. And again, just as a reminder, to all of our attendees, please use that Q&A box. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can as we start the program. LaTisha, I'd like to start back with you. Could you tell the audience and Jessica and Matt as well, just a little bit more about the challenges you faced during COVID and how you kind of adapted during all of this and what you're doing now to kind of try to rebound?
So we have, COVID has been difficult for everybody, small businesses especially, and now I have a new word, micro businesses, right? Because we know what the SBA considers small business, and that doesn't necessarily fit our paradigm. We're a lot smaller than that. And so we found that the confusion, of course, across the river, everybody knows, whether or not should wear a mask, not wearing masks. Having the governor of Iowa make changes for us in the month of June was a huge spike in business at a nice time when the weather was changing for everybody. So we saw a lot of outdoor business. We saw that happening because that was a heavy hit, of course, for everybody in March, April, and May. And then, of course, June was a time to kind of regroup from that, if you will, So just not understanding the changes that were happening and how long COVID is actually going to be around. Nobody having any insight into that was really kind of difficult, because I think everybody at the time was really trying to just hold on to every bit of information that was ever changing, right? And so you really had to be connected to the pieces to the puzzle. You had to be connected in a part of your chamber. You had to be a part of your restaurant association. You had to be a part of these entities that could, the health department that was really flowing in that information to you, those government officials. So what we really saw is a huge decline, of course, like everybody else did in March, April and May, and then June, we, in Iowa, we had that huge spike, of course, because the law changed. We went from not being able to seat anyone indoors, or at all, right? It was just curbside only pickup, to now you can actually have 50% inside. And that was a game changer. I mean, total game changer. And we had this huge spike, and people was coming back out again. Like I said, the weather was beautiful to accommodate that change, right? And of course, the industry has natural lulls and the ebb and flows. So you have, the fourth quarter, which could have been a challenge, right? Because now is, it's time to get a shot. The flu, is that going to be a real problem this year? And then we had this weather that we had. So in terms of how customers were flowing in, I think that that last month, even in December and January, people started to see that lull again, just because of the fear, and then people waiting to be on the list to get their shots and kind of know how that was going to roll out. And like I said, the weather being adverse as well. So we just had a lot of interesting hurdles this year to kind of climb, if you will, as did every business owner, right? There was just a lot of confusion. So I hope that answers your question more fully.
You did. Thank you for that. And Matt, I want to turn to you next. You heard LaTisha talk about it a bit. As a border community, we kind of have a pretty good understanding of how these states are handling COVID differently and what that meant for our restaurants. Can you talk a little bit about just what the Illinois side has done? Obviously, it was a little more restrictive than Iowa. What have you guys been advocating for during COVID, and what's kind of the next step for the Illinois Restaurant Association?
Sure. So, as you all know, especially on the east side of the river, it's been a constant struggle to really keep restaurants open, keep them open safely, and secure some pragmatic reopening regulations. And that's really what my job has been every day for the past year. We're really trying to just be at the table with elected officials at the local and state level, and public health experts to really get the most favorable regulations possible. Locally, we've worked with municipalities across Illinois to cut licensing fees, streamline and expand their permits for outdoor dining, things like that. And in Chicago, we also passed an ordinance that we're also pursuing at the state level that temporarily caps fees that third-party delivery services can charge onto restaurants. I think it's definitely a reasonable measure that puts some guardrails in place to protect and support our local restaurants when they really need it most. At the state level, we've really led the charge on reinstating indoor dining during mitigations. As you all remember, back in, depending on the region, October, November, essentially all of the state got shut down for indoor dining. And we were really beating the drum and calling on the governor to change that mitigation approach to allow for some limited indoor dining, even during mitigations. The state finally changed course in mid-January, so that was a good step in the right direction. We also helped to pass cocktails to go in Illinois, a couple other things like suspending the retailer delinquency lists and allowing for some additional payment flexibility between retailers and distributors. Those are some good steps to help restaurants, but every bit helps. But of course, so much more is needed. Right now, we're calling on the state to advance restaurant and hospitality workers into phase 1B of vaccine distribution, which will, of course, provide enhanced protection for our essential workers. We're also lobbying, as Jessica is, and all of our counterparts around the country and the National Restaurant Association, to pass a dedicated restaurant relief fund at the federal level. Right now, things are looking very good. It looks like it's going to be a $25 billion package. So we're very happy about that. And now we just need to get it over the finish line. We're also really focused on, more broadly on bringing back tourism, conventions, events into Illinois, because as all of you know, how crucial they are to the restaurant and hospitality industry. So, really urging the state to work with us as stakeholders to come up with some innovative solutions to allow for larger gatherings beyond 50 people, because that's really stifling our convention, tourism, events industry overall. So those are some things that we've been working on and things we're working on in the near future.
That's great. Thanks. Jessica, just to give a perspective from the Iowa side, obviously here in the Quad Cities, we saw Illinois be a little bit more restrictive, but that doesn't mean Iowa businesses, are thriving much better. It's hitting everybody in the country. And we know that restaurants usually are operating on pretty slim profit margins anyway. What are you hearing from your members in restaurants? Are they doing all right now? Is there more help that's needed in Iowa?
Well, of course, there's more help, because when COVID shutdowns began, the average operator had 16 days of cash on hand. In the state of Iowa, our shutdowns began on March 17th. We were never totally shut down because we were always allowed to do carry out and delivery and to go. And so on March 17th, we had with 2 hours notice on St. Patrick's Day, the on-premise closures were happened. That lasted for 77 of our 99 counties through May 1st. And then they were allowed to open at limited capacity. The rest of the counties came in about 2 weeks later. And currently in Iowa, there are actually no restrictions. And that is a mixed blessing, to be honest, because you need at least one restriction in place to continue to take advantage at the federal level of the employee relief tax credit. That being said, we had entered last March with the thought that if nothing happened, we would lose 1,000 of the 6,200 locations permanently across the state. But I do have to credit the state of Iowa for kicking into gear. We were making financial relief requests by March 18th. The Iowa Economic Development Authority started a grant program that they allotted $4 million for, but ended up being $90 million that went in grants up to $25,000. A lot of it went to restaurants and bars. For bars that were shut down temporarily, $10,000 per establishment was given to the bars in those 10 counties. We just completed another grant program in the state of Iowa, where we're expecting about 2,200 restaurants across the state that are Iowa-based full service restaurants. The group that we think was most hurt will get grants of anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000. So from the standpoint of state advocacy, we went for money wherever we could find it, and we continue to do that. Legislatively, right now, we have a bill that made it through funnel. This was funnel week here at the Iowa legislature that will give 12 months of forgiveness to any on-premise liquor license holder. For those who had deferrals, it will go and forgive the deferrals. For those who paid, they will receive a credit, and for those who are up for renewal, they'll get 12 months. And so we're very hopeful that that will continue to progress. We have strong legislative support for that. We entered the legislative season this year, which started in January. It's only 100 days long in Iowa, with both, like I said, immediate and long-term relief. The immediate relief was a grant program. We did get that restaurant-specific grant program of $40 million, where the money will be distributed this month. We were looking for tax relief, which we still hope to see come through as part of a larger tax package. We needed a lot of cleanup on cocktails to go, and I don't know if that was true in Illinois, but that was passed as a permanent fixture in our world in a very short legislative session, and there were just places in code that it was passed so quickly it didn't work very well, didn't make sense. So we have an amendment to the Alcoholic Beverage Division bill, so we think that is going to pass, and we got a lot of national help from Discus on that. Long term, we are seeking some alcohol distribution relief. Right now, if you are a restaurant or bar owner in the state of Iowa, you know that how you have to buy beer, how you have to buy spirits, and how you have to buy wine. We're looking to create equity in that long term. The thing that we got sidelined by that we did not expect to be dealing with this legislative session, and We can thank some of our friends in the grocery business who want to use Instacart, is third-party alcohol delivery, which is currently creating some really difficult situations in Iowa. And we find ourselves at odds with people who we're normally friends with at the legislature on third-party alcohol delivery. Because, you know, in the state of Iowa, if you pay DoorDash for alcohol and they pay the restaurant, and then they've resold it to the consumer, that's bootlegging here in our state, 3-tier state. And we can't quite figure out how this can be done legally. And so we are having some rather heated conversation about a bill with 4 words in it. So that's what's happening here.
Yep. I want to kind of dive into that issue a bit. We've seen some local stories here about third-party vendors and kind of what they've done to our restaurants. LaTisha, can you give your perspective? Do you guys work with these third-party contractors? Have you had issues there? What does that mean for your business?
So initially, when the situation began back in March of last year, we were using Bite Squad, and they no longer operated in the area. Then we went to Grubhub. And what we found is, yes, restaurants operate at a smaller margin than some other businesses. And what we found is that, you know, typically they were charging an upwards of 30%, you know, and so then how do you pass that on? And then restaurant owners had to deal with, okay, so if you're going to charge me the 30% and the food gets there, and then we've got problems with when it gets there, how it gets there, you know, what you look like when you're delivering it, you know, in addition to these additional costs that we started to accrue with to-go containers. Huge issue, because, you know, some of us, that was not a part of our normal way of doing business. And even if it was, we weren't doing it to the degree that we had to do in the month of March, April, May, and June, and the rest of the year, and so on and so forth. So now we have these drivers coming up and, you know, sort of disrupting service, you know, and they don't look identifiable. They don't have uniforms. I had one driver. If you've ever been to our business, we have 3 doors. 2 of the doors are completely barricaded by the patio. So, you know, you would know, do not go to these doors. And then you have the one main door that you walk up to. I had one guy, we watched him from the dining room, and I am not kidding, true real life situation. He gets out of his truck, belly and all, and was very visible, and his white t-shirt, and he comes up to both of the barricaded doors, and he's peeking inside like this. And finally, you know, we're going, what are you doing? You know, and so we don't know if he's drugged out or what his situation is. He has nothing in his hand. He comes into the door, and he's with his flip-flops and socks and t-shirt over above his belly. And he goes, "I'm here to pick up Grubhub." And I said, "The hell you are. No, you're not. You're not delivering my food to any of my customers. Not happening today." And I had to send him on his way. So we have these other things, right? You know, what they look like, food safety, you know, food temperature. I've had to ask them numerous times, where are your bags? Where are your t-shirts? You know, how do my customers know that you're representing the company that you say you are? How do I know something from your nasty face or your nasty car isn't falling into my customer's package? You know what I mean? And so we can control that, right? When it's our people from our restaurant doing the delivery, right? We can control the standard. And if your food has a standard, you definitely want to deliver with the same level of standard. But the other portion that was difficult for restaurant owners is not only the appearance and the safety and all of that, and that particular logistics, but also the fact that now I'm being charged 30% on a product. So now what we were being told is that, well, you can make up the difference if you want and just charge more. So if the sandwich costs $5, make the sandwich $8 to make up your costs. Well, I'll tell you what, that for me, just did not work. I was not going to do that. We have a lot of repeat customers, and they notice that kind of a thing. The other thing I'm going to say is not only the cost, but anytime a customer wanted to tip, or they wanted to do something additional. It was very difficult. The messages weren't coming across to the driver, to the store. So the communication was really, really bad, and anytime the customer was unhappy with the delivery driver, the delivery service on their platform, on the Grubhub platform or the Bite Squad or whatever the platforms are, they don't always. Now they're starting to try to do that, make a difference between the reviews for the driver as opposed to the restaurant, So all of these things, really took place. And I want to digress for a moment, and I need to say this because I think it's very important. One of the things that I've not heard conversation about, but I know that every single restaurant out there, we took a hit, unbelievably so, in one area commonly above all, and that is that swipe. Customers coming in, swiping those credit cards, that percentage, you have some customers that would pay cash and in the restaurant, but now everybody's doing it. More and more customers are doing it. And so what does that mean? That means that more costs to do business, and just to do the initial business. So we've got the takeout, we've got the cost to swipe. Now we've got this 30% upcharge, and then we're trying to keep employees alive. And we're trying to, in terms of staying in business, and then we're trying to stay in business as well. So there's a lots of different platforms that we're trying to work from. I also want to say, if I may, I also want to say, I appreciate, Jessica and Matt, the work that has to happen from your end. I wish that there was, and perhaps there is, more conversation happening with restaurants. But in particular, when I think about the grants that took place, I was not able to take advantage of those grants. So I think that some of the things that need to really be considered is that you have different kinds of business models. And one of the things that you need to know, and that I would like you to know, that perhaps but it doesn't seem to that the monies is flowing in that direction. And that's this. You have businesses like mine that are probably in business for 3 years. So that time frame, we opened our location currently, we opened that location in September of 2018. So our first full year was 2019. Any business, no matter the model, no matter the type of business, their first full year is the worst year. It should be not a bad year, but the worst year, correct? In terms of dollars, we're only going up from there. So now we come into 2020, and then we have this wonderful increase. We have a projection. We understand where we're going. We've had a great year behind us, and now we're moving forward. Now in the middle of March, we understand that we have to close our doors and do business differently. So that March is first quarter.
Right.
So when we begin to use the language of quarter, while I may have had the decline, it may not be in the one quarter. And I'll say this. So we've got March, which is the first quarter. Then you've got April, May, June. June, any restaurant worth its salt should have done a killer job in Iowa because the weather was absolutely perfect and the laws changed, right? And so that could have totally wiped you out for that first quarter. And it doesn't mean that you weren't hit hard and hurt, with those other months that were involved. And then you've got the last part of the year, which was very, very difficult. And I'm understanding not just for my restaurant, but for many, many restaurants. So I've got 4 months, right, of negative, negative flow, a flow that's, negative to me, but it's not in the same quarter. And then when you say, well, it needs to be 15% because to apply for the grant, to get the grant or to get the PPP, you need to be 25% or 15% overall for the year. Well, I have to say this to you. If you are a new business and your second year is 25% worse than your first year, you are a dead duck, darling.
Yep.
By the time the ambulance get there, you are dead on arrival.
Yeah. And Matt, I'm sorry, Latisha.
No, go ahead.
Can you kind of talk about, what are the lessons that we've learned from this? How is not only the Illinois, but the National Restaurant Association trying to pivot a bit and say, we've been through this now. Are there ways that we can make this grant processing more available? There's people that like Latisha have been left behind. Is that kind of what's happening? Or now that we've been through it, you guys are kind of working through how we can better serve these businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Latisha, I hear you all around on these issues. You're definitely a prime example and kind of a microcosm of everything that restaurants are dealing with, particularly on delivery services, and then also issues with grants and different relief programs. As anyone on the Illinois side has seen, the big grant program in Illinois wrapped up or exhausted its funding at the end of last year, and a lot of people weren't happy with it. There was could have been a lot of improvements when it comes to communication and transparency, how things worked, and really getting it to the industries that needed it most. So we've had a lot of conversations with the state about if and when new federal money comes in to replenish that program. Really want a lot of areas for improvements that we've made known and will continue to stress moving forward. And then, when it comes to PPP, I think fortunately the restaurant and hospitality industry, we did secure some favorable changes to PPP in the second draw that make it more possible for restaurant businesses to be able to apply and get their loans. Wow, I'm blanking. Get their
forgiven.
Wow, I kept thinking of get their loans forgiven. So those were good steps. And then also, in the latest, the $25 billion restaurant revitalization fund that's coming down the pike. There's a lot of changes in that. It'll be more accessible, really, to businesses. Any restaurant business or any hospitality business, as long as you have 20 locations or less, doesn't matter your affiliation. So you could be a small franchise, you could be a chain, you could be an independent. So that was really something that was, everyone was happy with. So some good things coming down the pike. I think there's, always room for improvements and a lot of unique challenges that our industry faces, when it comes to, as Latisha said, being forced to look at certain quarters or a certain percentage, but that doesn't really reflect, how bad it is for us when typically, even in a good year, a restaurant is, making, 3 to 5% profit margin. So maybe 3 pennies, 5 pennies out of every dollar you're able to collect. So I think some definitely some good things coming on the horizon, some challenges when it comes to loans and grants that we're working on the Illinois side. I'm sure it sounds like in Iowa you're having similar challenges related to the state's grant programs and things like that, and certainly at the federal level.
Sure. And Jessica,
if I might add, Latisha, it is really tough because in our roles we're given Sophie's choice every time, and so when I'm with someone from the governor's office or with Debbie Durham, and she says, "Look, Jessica, I can't give you the $100 million you're asking for, but I can give you 40. And so we're going to have to agree that what some of these parameters are." The hardest phone calls for us there's been 2 kinds, and I just need to know that we're thinking about it. One is the small businesses that just started, and we've got folks that started their business on March 18th sitting in Elkhorn, right? I mean, they qualify for nothing. But the hard ones right now are people not understanding that franchise owners are local small business owners. And those franchise owners have actually had a tougher time getting state money because the state has prioritized things that give a unique taste and flavor to Iowa, and what they perceive to have been the hardest hit, which actually we've agreed are people who were not quickly equipped to go to carry out delivery and who have that service staff making the tip wage, and how much those businesses were hurt. But that's not to say that we aren't continuing to fight to get some of that grant money. And on third-party delivery service, and Matt, I don't know if you're politically in a position to say this in Illinois, but I will tell you they're predators. Flat out, they're predators. They prey on our industry. They have no standards related to food safety. They can have animals in the car. They can vape in the car. They don't have to have temperature controlled bags. They can pick up passengers between 28% of them admit to eating food before they hand it to people. And we are at every level trying to create a framework that stops them being predatory to our industry, because 30% is unacceptable. And the biggest message that the legislators didn't know that we've been fighting on because alcohol delivery came out of the blue is they think that we are choosing these relationships and we're paying these people to do this. They don't understand at all that there's never a situation where a restaurant pays them. It's always the restaurant either getting the full price from somebody who hasn't identified themselves as a third-party delivery service, so we don't even have access to our own customer data, or they're raking you over the coals and paying you every other week with that huge dollar amount. And so that is a huge conversation that this next legislative session we are taking to the streets, and we will need restaurants across the state to be willing to explain how difficult that has been and how many people take your menu without your permission and don't identify themselves and how it's hurting your business. And I'm on a soapbox because I'm passionate and I'm angry.
Yeah, and as we talk about solutions, Matt, maybe you can talk to this a bit too. We've talked PPP, but the ERTC, the Employee Retention Tax Credit's been updated now. That's something that I think the chambers continue to advocate for that to be expanded and updated. Can you talk a little bit about how that helps restaurants and why that might be a valuable tool for all of our attendees to know about?
Sure. And, as you said, there was definitely some nice wins for the hospitality industry in some changes that were made recently to ERTC. But the IRS actually just recently released its guidance for eligible businesses. So they can, access up to $5,000 per employee in 2020, as long as it doesn't directly intersect with PPP payroll funds. And the National Restaurant Association just released a fact sheet on ERTC to really help, all of our operators discuss, this opportunity, and let all of you guys discuss it with your tax and accounting teams, because those are really the folks to talk to make sure it makes sense for your business. But the recent notice from the IRS does make important changes for restaurants who access PPP in 2020. And it'll allow many restaurants to access a credit that's equal to 50% of qualified wages paid, including qualified health plan expenses, for up to $10,000 per employee in 2020. And the maximum credit available for each employee is $5,000 in 2020. I know as I said, there's a really nice fact sheet that kind of breaks everything down from the NRA. And hopefully, Jake, you guys can share that with attendees after the webinar. It'd be really good for people to reference.
Yeah, actually, if you open the Q&A for me, I can stick the PDF in there. It is an awesome document.
Yep, we will do that. And we'll also send it out after to all of our attendees so they have that fact sheet. Jessica, I know in Iowa, the hospitality and restaurant industry is huge in terms of workforce. What are you hearing from businesses, and are there other state programs that can help keep employees? Obviously, it's a huge, not only for the restaurant, but the employees that are working for them too. How do they kind of navigate that?
Yeah, it's interesting that you would ask that, because prior to COVID, if you would have talked to me last February and said, what is your biggest problem? I would say workforce. Can't find anybody to work. And when it headed into COVID with 155,000 Iowans employed in our industry, we were not the largest private sector employer, but number 2 after healthcare in our state. We have the last set of data shows us that about 27,000 jobs were lost in Iowa's industry due to COVID. That being said, in urban areas, we're kind of back to the problem of finding workers again, because people are trying to ramp back up. We were very fortunate in that the Iowa Workforce Development folks, the day that we started to see on-premise closures, told us to tell employers, get your people on unemployment. And so we did massive get your people on unemployment efforts, and people had checks normally within about a week. But because workforce has always been an issue in Iowa, those 27,000 people aren't sitting around looking to come back. A lot of them have found work in other places. They were qualified people, they were great people, and we've lost them. And so, to be honest, our biggest issue right now back in hospitality is finding people to work again, particularly in areas like the Quad Cities or in Des Moines, because we need them back.
LaTisha, has that been an issue for you as well? Did you guys have to lay employees off, or are you back to normal staffing levels?
So we didn't have to lay anybody off because we're small and we run really efficiently, but we are at a place now that we do need to start hiring. And so I definitely feel that it's a challenge looking for persons who either have that experience or are new into the industry and excited about working in hospitality. So yeah, I definitely feel that.
Great. And just to follow up on that, I mean, when I go to Bayside Bistro and when people go there, they talk about the great atmosphere, not just the delicious food, but also just that they enjoy being inside the restaurant. Do you guys do carry out orders? Are you seeing a lot of carry out business now? Obviously, when the doors were closed, you had to do that, but are people coming back in now and spending time there?
They are. They're pretty excited about the patio being open back up. So that's a huge part of the business, and I think for the industry as a whole, just as the weather gets warmer, we do still do a lot of takeout. We occasionally do some of the third party, our customer has decided, no, I'm coming down. I'll come down, I'll pick up. So we don't see very much from third party anymore. Some days more than others, of course. And then, people are enjoying the dining room setting. So I will say this also in terms of seating. Now, I know that Iowa doesn't have any restrictions, but we are a small restaurant. And so before COVID, we set up to 42. Now we sit about 22 to 24. And we remain that way because what we're finding is that it is the customer who determines how they want things to be. And they want to sit that 6 feet apart. They want to feel the distance between the next table. They don't want their backs next to somebody else. And I've had other people come in and be very grateful that we hadn't returned to that because they feel very uncomfortable in other places with that, with everybody being close again. So, we pay the cost for that. Right. In terms of having less seats, those are less tables, to turn, and so we're definitely looking forward to the patio opening back up for seating's sake.
Great. And just a reminder to our attendees, if you all have questions for Jessica, Matt, or Latisha, please put those in the Q&A and we'll get to those as we start to wrap up here a bit. Matt and Jessica, again, in the Quad Cities, we've had a really strong response to let's support local businesses. We call it Keep It QC. Let's make sure that we're buying gift cards, that you're doing these carry-out orders when businesses were really struggling. Are there other things that you found in Illinois and in Iowa that have been successful methods to continue supporting businesses that we could share with not only restaurant owners today, but just our community at large? Are there other things they can be doing to make sure restaurants are viable during this?
Matt, I can pop in there. And one of the things that we've been doing here in Iowa is really sharing with people what profit margins look like. And pre-COVID, the average Iowa restaurant had a net profit of $97 a day. And when you are making averages, that's the number of restaurants divided by 365, looking at our gross receipts in the state, and then taking it down, assuming a 5% profit. Averages mean there were people that were below that. And so what we have asked people to do is, even though the restrictions are off and you're starting to slowly see, no restaurant turned over and put all their tables back in, threw the mask off their staff and said, oh, everything's better, right? What it did do by lifting restrictions is allow businesses to decide, how is it going to work for us to slowly determine what our customers are comfortable with. And depending on your demographic, it might be more tables, it might not, it might be continuing to do what you were. But what we've asked people to do is for the next 6 months to get us over the hump, if you regularly go to a restaurant twice a week, go 1 more time, go 3 times. If you go 5 times, go 6 times. If you go 1 time, go 2 times, because that extra use of whatever service type, carry out, dine in, delivery, however you drive through, whatever you do, that might be the difference maker if your regular customers just see you through a little bit longer on support. And that's what we've really been promoting. And we have had good luck locally with people sharing that message as well.
Yeah, definitely. And just to echo what Jessica was saying, I think, encouraging diners maybe and to come in kind of at off-peak hours too. That's really helpful, to really just keep the restaurant business going throughout the day. Ordering direct, of course, kind of sidestepping third-party delivery services. As we all know, there all the issues going on there, and you're losing 30% of your revenue. Ordering direct, that's certainly what we encourage. Also, what we've done at the IRA a couple times throughout the pandemic is really put out like education campaigns, just reminding people that restaurants are here, they know how to serve you safely then, now, and always. The importance of wearing masks, the importance of social distancing, being respectful of each other, being safe, just things like that to really just kind of try to boost consumer confidence. And then on the kind of on the more like government fronts and regulatory fronts, definitely encourage them, any local municipalities to consider capping third-party delivery fees. I mean, it's becoming more and more prominent, and delivery services, you can't live with them, can't live without them. I mean, they provide a crucial service right now, especially during COVID, but there is a vast amount of room for improvement in the way that delivery services treat restaurants. So exploring capping third-party delivery service fees is definitely something I would encourage municipalities to do. Other things that are really important, as Latisha was saying, people are expecting and excited for outdoor dining. So if there are any restrictions in the Quad Cities, about we can't really do that with outdoor dining, or oh no, that's the buildings department, not the health department. Like, have your city figure out a way to make it work, because it's like we all kind of understand that COVID, we're not going to snap our fingers and have it go away overnight. And we're kind of at the levels of occupancy that we're going to be at for a while until there's a vaccine readily available to everyone. So you can only get so many people inside a space, but outdoors, on your sidewalks, closing down streets, parkways, alleys, whatever it might be, really encourage your local governments to come up with innovative solutions and break down whatever barriers there are to expanded outdoor dining, because that's what people expect, that's what they're excited for, and that's what the restaurants really are going to rely on for the next several months. A couple other things that would be helpful, if there's meal taxes in the area, restaurant taxes, consider suspending those, or allowing restaurants to keep that money for a little bit longer, just to help with cash flow. And then other things, like I know, like it sounds like the chamber is doing a great job at just encouraging those, like, shop local, different restaurant weeks, different promotions, takeout Tuesdays, things like that. Anything to just drum up awareness and really, bolster our local restaurants. It all helps right now.
Absolutely. Matt, you did a great job leading me into so all of our attendees know, Quad Cities Restaurant Week does kick off on March 22nd. So as we're talking about this, it's another way. It's a week where we're asking people to shop local and go out and support all of our local restaurants. So I wish every week was like that, but we're really focusing March 22nd. That's the first week where we're really going to continue to ask people to support local businesses. And Jessica, please chime in there. We've got a few minutes left, so
yeah,
you kind of have a closing comment.
Well, there is one thing, that's different between the Iowa side and the Illinois side. And that is that cities can't do those things in Iowa because of preemption laws. So there is no, if anything's going to happen to cap fees or do legislation related to third party, it really is going to come at the state level. I would include anyone who is on the Iowa side to go look at the Iowa Restaurant Association site. We have 4 key areas that we're asking for at the state level for third-party delivery, and sharing that with your local legislator would be helpful. City councils can't do much in Iowa related to that particular topic.
Great. And Latisha and Matt, I'll let you guys kind of close this out here. If you can, just any final comments on how we can continue to, Latisha, how people can support you, and Matt, if there's any advocacy pushes that are happening in Illinois, please let everybody in attendance know about those.
First, before I close, I just want to say thank you to every single accountant in the United States. Because our accountants, they had to really make it happen for every small business, the push for PPP. I don't think we realized how much work they had to do and are still doing to make sure that our books are right, and that our taxes get done, and that, we're getting these different grants, and how much we're depending on them, probably more than we ever have. So I just want to say thank you to all of the accountants out there who are on the call and anywhere else. So Bayside Bistro, what you need to know is that we make everything from scratch. That's what you got to know. It's just down home goodness. And so don't ask me when you come in, where am I from? Because I'm not from the South. I'm from the South side of Chicago. So there you have it. Somebody asked me what the heck island I was from. I'm like, what the heck? I don't have an accent, but the food is made from scratch, and with lots and lots of love. We treat you just like family when you come in, and we do cater. And I want to thank all of the larger corporations out there during the pandemic. I tell you what, you really kept some of our businesses alive by calling us up and getting some catering done. And to help your employees through that time, and everybody stayed safe. And so if you can continue to do that, that would really, really help us out. Call me up. I can help you out. Anybody else out there can help you out. So that collaboration between the larger corporations in the area and restaurants, is a huge help. So I just want to say thanks for that. And then we are now open for reservations for dinner at Bayside Bistro in the village of East Davenport.
Great.
Latisha, I like the South Side shout out. I'm a Southsider as well. I live in Mount Greenwood. So
Blue Island.
there you go. So yeah, just a few other things I want people to be aware of. Reach out to me or anyone on the IRA team anytime. You can sign up for our emails on our website. I think we've sent something like 250 email alerts out over the past 10 months, just getting people the information they need to know, breaking alerts, different guidance, things like that. We also have for your employees, if they're not aware already, our educational foundation launched our employee relief fund last fall. We've given out over $250,000 in $500 grants to more than 500 recipients so far throughout the state. So please send them our way if your folks still are in need of financial assistance. We've got some pro bono consulting networks of attorneys and dining design networks, or dining design experts, as well as a database of reopening services that can help. And we also recently formed a partnership with ACAP and the Loan Source to help restaurants secure PPP loans. So if you don't have a big relationship or you're still looking for PPP, definitely encourage you to explore that. And then we're also doing pretty much bi-weekly webinars on different issues, bringing on experts to talk about things like generating new revenue, mental health supports, marketing strategies, increasing off-premise sales, real estate concerns, stuff like that. So you can find all that information on our website. We're here to help, so please feel free to reach out to us anytime.
Great. Well, Matt, Latisha, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us this morning and giving everybody here in the Quad Cities a little bit more information on what they can continue to do to support restaurants. We appreciate you guys joining us. I want to give another shout out again to our Legislative Series annual sponsors, AM General, Arconic, Exelon Generations, and Stanley Consultants. For everyone on the call, our next legislative event will also take place Friday, March 19th at 9 a.m. So we'll hope you'll join us for that. And again, thank you to our panelists. We really appreciate it. Until then, hope everyone has a great weekend. Continue to support our local businesses and go get some great food at Bayside. So thank you everybody for joining us this morning.
Thanks everyone.